Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear viewers. Welcome to another episode of Her Thoughts. Inshallah, in today's episode, we'll be discussing a topic that is often associated with this time of year, often associated with women, and in particular, Sayyida Zainab alayhi salam, and that is the topic of hijab. Over the last couple of decades, we've seen the hijab evolve a lot, both in how it's worn, but also in the fact that some people may think it's being commercialized. We have the advent of hijabi influencers, hijabi bloggers, and you could say and argue that it's become an industry of its own. Today with me I have sisters Zahra, Sayyida and Zahra again. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
In previous episodes we've talked a lot about role models and social media, and now, like I said, there's this whole new niche almost of hijabi influencers, hijabi bloggers, things like that. How much influence do you really think these people have?
I think me personally, and purely just talking about myself, I tend not to look at these people because I find that generally us Muslims, Shia Muslims, we already face difficulties in this society, in the Western society. And I feel like if I was to look at, hijab tutorials online, how to wear it, how not to wear it, it would almost kind of, even if I didn't want it to, you might start thinking, oh, let me try and give it a go and let me wear it like that. And also I think for me, because I have a daughter, I find it so important to not try and influence myself because I don't want it to influence her. If she sees me, I am her role model. So if she sees me wearing hijab in a particular way, the hijab on the head, the hijab of the clothes, hijab of how you are, how you act as a person, your mannerism, your actions, that will influence her. And I don't want her to turn around and say to me, but mummy, you're wearing it like this, but Islam says no. Or mummy, why are you doing this? And I don't want her to then start following and doing the same. None of us are perfect, and I myself, I'm the first one to put my hand up and say I'm not perfect, but we can only try and become better human beings and better examples of ourselves.
I think especially as a graduate in media, I completely recognise the influence that media has on individuals, and this is we studied this in a whole semester at university, the influence of media, the influence of technology. And we don't recognise that when we were growing up, the only kind of outside influence that we got was either a couple of programs on TV or when we left the house. Yeah. Now our youth are getting 24/7 outside influence drumming into their heads, and we don't recognise this, but our kids are in their room 24/7 on these devices, and the influence is really great. Now for individuals like us who have already matured and have already kind of established who we are, it may not affect us to that degree, but for a youngster who still hasn't identified who they are, hasn't established themselves
and wants to be fashionable,
and wants to become fashionable, and they're still going through the transition period, so this will affect who they become as an adult. And that's why I emphasize that we must provide an alternative. If the only thing they see is fashion bloggers, that their main concern is makeup, and this is, by the way, no means of attack on the people that do makeup and fashion. I'm sure there's a niche for it, but if that's the only thing they see, then we're not providing an alternative. But we're not going to be able to tell our youth to not go on social media at all. It's not going to happen. They are going to eventually go on it, whether their friends tell them to or they are. So I always say we need to provide an alternative to people that look like us, people that are putting out valuable content out there, that's educational content that will, rather than take them down the route where it's all about how you look and the wrong route, we should put out content out there which will take them down the correct route. And the coronavirus, by the way, done a great advantage for us, because before I always said that centres never had YouTube channels, they never had all this online content. Suddenly everyone's opening a YouTube channel and putting online content, which is great. But we need to kind of balance out the negative influence.
Just to add on to what you've said, Zahra, in previous episodes, you mentioned it's not just about providing an alternative, but providing it early, right? Because, like you said, the age at which we put on the hijab is such a pivotal and tender age, and if by then the alternative hasn't been provided, then inevitably they're going to go to the easiest option, which is a phone or a tablet, Instagram, YouTube, whatever, and you know, get examples from there.
That's true.
You know, I just go on.
No, go ahead.
I just want to say that, you know, for me, one of the things that strikes out for me is when my daughter first started wearing hijab. Now she's 11 now, so she started wearing it just before the age of 9. And I remember when she had to wear hijab in school, there wasn't many Muslim girls wearing hijab at that time. So for her, of course, she feels a little bit, you know, a bit anxious, a bit embarrassed, as you would do, as any 9-year-old girl would do. But I came in, I spoke to the teacher, I wrote a letter as well to the head to say, this is now, you know, this is what she's going to do, this is what we do in our religion. And I spoke to the teacher just to make her feel at ease and make her feel comfortable. And what she said to me, something that really sticks out in my mind, I thought she would get asked loads of questions. But she went into school feeling a little bit apprehensive, and she came back and I said, Sakina, how was it for you? And she said, Mummy, nobody asked me any questions. Mummy, they just said, oh, this looks nice. And that was it. And she carried on her day. And alhamdulillah, she's never looked back. I know she's only 11, but that strikes out to me that, you know, start them young. And make it as normal and as an everyday part of their life as it is, because she sees everyone around her wearing hijab. She sees all the main women in her lives wearing hijab. So for her, it's the norm. She knows that this is something. It was never forced upon her. It was never like, you have to wear hijab. It was almost like she understood. Okay, I'm turning 9. This is what I'm going to do now, and it was normal for her. You know.
Absolutely.
I was going to say that it's, you know, we're focusing a lot on the physical hijab, and I think when you look at the influencers on Instagram, etc., I always find that quite fascinating how they first started, a lot of them, you know, quite popular names, millions of followers, supposedly being the role models for hijab, you know, hijabi girls, and, you know, you can be fashionable and you can also be of faith. But actually when we look at what we are, you know, covering, we're not just covering our physical hair, we're covering our senses. This is I remember speaking to an academic he was a graduate of Harvard, and he was trying to convince me to read a book one of his colleagues had written about hijab. She was a feminist, and she had said that hijab is an oppression. She was a Muslim woman, by the way. And he said, you know, so why do you wear it? And I said, I wear it because it's a spiritual covering to me as much as it is a physical covering. And his face, his jaw, I could see it drop, metaphorically. And he said, what do you mean spiritual? And I said, it's a covenant, because for me, you're looking at me as a woman that has particular standards and, you know, etiquettes and role, you know, that I'm certain things you'll know I'll not do and what I will do. But I said, for me, it's also it's a barrier for me to prevent me from sinning, and I'm covering my senses, my ears and my eyes. I'm not going to be wearing hijab and then looking at something sinful. I need to protect my soul because this is covering me physically. But how am I going to elevate myself towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? It's through protecting my soul. And this is a stark reminder that, you know, I won't be getting too close to, you know, non-mahram men. There will be boundaries and barriers there, and that's what your haya is. And when these influencers go down this path of nourishing their physical self, they've neglected their souls. At the point then they also have said, when they discussed their journeys, they said, you know, why did you choose to remove it? Because it was me. Because when you're focusing on the self on a physical level, you're you know, aggravating your ego. And this ego in every woman wants to flaunt her beauty. You know, that's how Allah has created us. Do you know what I look like if my hair's showing just a little bit? You know, what are we doing? And actually it's a struggle. I'm not vindicating any of those sisters, because hijab is a struggle for everyone. We have lows and we have highs. And Muharram, alhamdulillah, is one of those times that it really does, inshallah, if we connect properly, it emphasizes us to give us our strength back. And that's why it's so important to connect in these months. But equally, when day-to-day life, we're going to work, we're going to university, we want to be fashionable. I mean, these young girls, I mean, they have so much pressure on them not to look like they're invisible in society. But these bloggers have not helped themselves, I feel, because almost if you're neglecting yourself and you're serving a purpose that's just physical, then what are you doing? You're destroying yourself, and you're doing it from the inside to the point where this is meaningless. And I think that, you know, modesty can be observed by people who don't even cover, and it is something that even sisters who do cover may not have the modesty. So we need to make sure we wear it for the right reasons. And when they're younger, like you're saying, your child is at school, I feel children are so innocent that they don't question these things. It's the adults that we become corrupt, and we start thinking, oh, you know, why are you oppressed? And, you know, I remember I was a manager at one of my previous jobs, and I had a Muslim girl who didn't wear hijab, and I wore hijab, and my colleagues would go into her when I'd leave the office early. They would ask my staff and say, well, is she oppressed? Is she forced to wear it because she's wearing hijab and you're not? And she said no. And she's a modest girl, but in terms of a different modesty. And I just thought that was so profound that, you know, you're asking if I'm oppressed. Do I sound oppressed to you? You know, what is that narrative? But again, it's standing your own ground and not feeling that, yes, you, like say the Zainab, we've spoken about her, you may be the only person wearing it, but give that strength to your daughters to say, be in that crowd and be the only one, but wear it for the right reasons, because you will have that conviction in your heart.
Which brings me nicely on to a little subtopic which often is associated with the hijab nowadays, the issue of peer pressure. So we actually have an email here from one of our viewers. Assalamu alaikum, hope you're well. I'm a 21-year-old student currently living in London. I still find myself struggling with my hijab until today. Although I know that the modest hijab shown on social media by the bloggers and influencers is not actually the hijab Islam teaches us to uphold, but sometimes I feel somewhat pressured to dress in a certain way to be able to fit in with the crowd. I'm constantly struggling to find a way to wear my hijab that would fit in with Western fashion, and the hijab that is also stated in jurisprudence, which is literally what you've been saying. This need to fit in, this need to conform. And in previous episodes we mentioned it doesn't matter what you do, we're never going to fit in 100%. So why sacrifice on your end? Why give in on your end? Why, you know, almost be apologetic on your end?
Have you noticed, I don't know about your experiences, but I've noticed people who bend the rules of their religion. So if I've had non-Muslim colleagues say to me, oh, that Muslim, oh, he drinks, and they look at it so disrespectfully. And whereas if you actually conform and you say, yes, this is part of my faith, and say it with conviction, they won't budge, they won't question, but why? Because they know you know what you're talking about. So it really comes from how you sell yourself. And if you're a young girl, and like I said, you know, it's getting harder, and we can't be harsh on girls who struggle with their hijab, but actually be those older role models that we can say that you can do it. And perhaps, you know, have that support network. And I think that's why I feel like as sisters, you know, women of Islam, we have so much to give to each other. Like some of us are older, we can help. It doesn't have to be your own daughter. But reach out to those girls that are struggling and help one another, because really in numbers you feel that strength. And it could be, you could be at university on your own. So
definitely. You know, an example that comes through my mind is when I was, this was when I was a lot younger, and I had, just before I graduated, I was doing my pre-registration year. And I was doing it with an independent opticians. And I remember the director, the owner of that store, what later I found out, said, so I went through the interview process and they liked me, and I got the position. And it was only later that I found out was he had said, if only she could take that thing off her head. And it was good that I didn't know that at the time, because it would have maybe demoralized me a little bit. But I found that out later from another colleague. And they then realized that actually, yes, she wears the hijab, but she's good at what she does. She's respectful, she has manners. And it was after I left, after I'd graduated and I left, did they then say, oh, the next person is not like her. So actually, it was a whole complete 180. In the beginning, they wanted me because I ticked the boxes in terms of qualifications, but they didn't want me with my hijab on. Later on, after I stuck at that job, they then realized that actually she doesn't use this as her barrier. She carries on, and I carried on, and I passed, and of course, you know, even now today when you go into work, and some people will look at you and think, can she actually test eyes? Is she going to test my eyes? You know, being an optician, people will think, oh my God, is she going to test my eyes? What is she wearing, you know? And then later on, they're like, no, actually, that was a really good sight test. Thank you. So don't use this as a barrier to achieve what you want to achieve. We can use this to our strength. You know?
Absolutely.
Definitely. I would say there's 3 aspects that we should tell our youth. Number 1 is that we should also tell them that everyone struggles with hijab. I mean, sometimes people feel like they're struggling with hijab, but then if we tell them that, you know, everyone, to a certain degree, of course people may struggle greater than others, but everyone that wears hijab struggles to a certain degree. If it's hot outside, you may struggle in that aspect. If it's you're self-conscious, you may struggle to that aspect as well. But number 2, I think peer pressure kind of lessens with maturity, and you know, many of our youngsters, they give up too early, and they don't realize that when you grow up, that level of peer pressure that you feel may lessen. You may not even feel it afterwards once you mature and you are established in who you are. So I always tell the youth, young girls, you know, they say, oh, you know, we're not as pretty as that girl, or we want to take it off. If only people knew how pretty we were without hijab. And I tell them, you know, all these aspects, you're not going to care about it once you grow up. You think about that now because of the peer pressure of your surroundings, but later on you're not going to feel that. That's number 2. And number 3, I think a lot of the peer pressure or we feel is kind of in our own head. And
absolutely.
and I always tell sisters, just walk out with your head up high and just be confident in your hijab. Because sometimes if someone's rude to us, we may think, oh, they're rude to us because of Islamophobia or hijab. They may just be a rude person.
Absolutely.
And
Don't look at it.
Don't look at, and you know, that person just may be a rude person that's rude to everyone, but we take it as our hijab. So sometimes it is because of the hijab, but a lot of times it's within our head. So if we had that confidence, and I always tell girls, have that positive thinking and confidence. Don't let outside influence. You know, I always find it that if someone lets outside influence affect them, that's a weak individual. We should be so strong and grounded in our own roots that we should, even if someone was to swear at us outside, it wouldn't rattle us.
But I'll tell you something funny, that it doesn't matter what age you get to, you will get people question you. And it wasn't so long ago, I had a Christian comment in saying that it was he was from the Middle East, and he said that, you know, his grandmother wore hijab, is part of culture, this is all fabricated in Islam. And, you know, I explained why I wore it again to somebody who should know better, because it comes from their culture where there's Muslim majority. And but again, there may be a problem with for us wearing it, but that doesn't, you know, if you know why you wear it and you're certified in your heart, it won't make a difference. Because, you know, the biggest irony of Corona, I find, is that we're all going out now wearing masks. And I looked at myself the other day in the mirror, and my son said to me, oh, Mum, why don't you get a black one? And I said, oh, because it will look like a niqab and I'm wearing a mask. And, you know, and I've worn niqab in Saudi Arabia. I've never worn niqab in this country. And I thought, but why? And then I read this article in one of those leading newspapers in the West, and it said how to smile with your eyes. And I laughed looking at the article, because I thought, right, so when the Garbis were going out in Britain wearing it, one of the biggest issues were, we can't see their facial expressions. You know, how do we know if they're smiling or they're scowling? Well, we're all wearing masks now. And literally, if I was practicing smiling and frowning, and you can't tell just from the eyes how someone's, you know, and we're all kind of, oh, can you tell if I'm scowling at you? No, I can't tell. So it's society changes, and it will change its, you know, its contemporary issues from period to period. What is unacceptable today becomes acceptable. So why are we going with this? Is something that's eternal. It's going to be our protection. It's going to be our intercessor in the next world. That Allah, we strived for you. This is our striving. This is our jihad on nafs. And you know, we have so much that we want to obviously show in this world to Allah, that we do believe in faith that you've prescribed to us. So why are we letting people dictate to us?
Absolutely.
You know, just do what's right for yourself. And if you're not feeling wearing it, you know, come to the right reasons why you feel either way. But, you know, the worst thing is wearing it and disrespecting it. I find that really uncomfortable, that, you know, like you're saying, you know, your etiquettes are not mirroring. Honour your hijab, because this is a great honour to wear it.
I guess it comes down to the very foundation, right? Because we see a lot of influencers now, like you said, removing the hijab. And often it kind of exposes that perhaps it wasn't on for the right reason to begin with. And just to backtrack to what you were saying, Zahra, about confidence, so important. This is a trivial point, but I was speaking to someone about weight loss recently, and they said to me, there's a habit you should form, like if someone offers you chocolate or whatever, something you shouldn't eat, don't say, I can't eat it. I don't eat it. And similarly, if we had like the same conviction with hijab, I don't do this and I do this. Not I wear hijab, but I am good at my job. I wear hijab and I am good at my job. Just having those subtle tweaks in our confidence and in our mindset makes such a huge difference.
Definitely. And I really do think, I mean, you know, I've been in all sorts of positions, and I think because I'm sort of like, now it's a bit easier. I know when I went to school as a teenager, I was the only brown face in the whole year. And when my daughter went to school, in a similar school to where I was, you know, it was not that same issue. So we all have our own issues according to our own generations. And I think, you know, I've often been the minority of a Muslim woman in, say, management, and I feel, you know, I've had my challenges, but I'm very astute with what I believe in. I think I'm very, you know, I do stick to my principles, and I think time, alhamdulillah, has got easier for our Muslim sisters in jobs and, you know, in careers building. But I think that the best dawah is your akhlaq, and if people can see that you are absolutely good and even better, but your performance is fine, then let people judge you for what, you know, your looks are.
Absolutely.
I mean, you know, the brains are there. What does it matter what I look like? And I think that, like you're saying, it comes down to confidence in your abilities, and, you know, and just flourish in what you are as a person, because it doesn't matter what you are on the outside. Orange hair, I find that offensive. You know, I mean, I don't. But I'm just saying that it's, you know, everyone has their own particulars, and we can't all conform. So.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And make it so it's a norm for you. It's your everyday part of life. You wouldn't even, I mean, I don't even dream of going into the back garden without my hijab on, because, you know, the neighbours might see me. And I teach my daughter the same thing. Make sure, even if it's hot, Mummy, do I need to put my scarf on? Yes, you do, because the neighbours can see you. So make it a point that actually it's your everyday, you wouldn't dream about going out without clothes on, you know? So it is your covering, it is part of you, it is who you are. Make that the symbol of who you are. So today nobody can say to you, oh, why are you wearing hijab like this? You know, why are you covered like this?
Absolutely.
I think, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say that one of the things that I find that we've got to move away from is the emotional kind of blackmailing that we do to our younger girls. I'll say that Zainab's hijab, because I know absolutely that her hijab is, you know, it touches her heart, it breaks her heart. But when a child you want to build a connection, giving a negative, you know, connection is not going to help that child. Oh, Sayyida Zainab was, well, if you haven't built a connection with Sayyida Zainab, she's really not going to care why her hijab was removed. So it's really about looking at the causes of why you're wearing it. And for younger children and daughters and, you know, teenagers, that it's looking at the, you know, the deeper levels, and then saying, because this whole, you know, well, if you don't do this, God is going to be angry. You know, we've got to move away from that kind of teaching, because I'm far more intellectual.
Let them understand why they're wearing the hijab, and let them then fall in love with the hijab, that they never want to take it off. And this is why, for me, you know, going back to ziyarah, why it was so important to take my daughter especially to Sayyida Zainab, because we talk about Sayyida Zainab all the time, but I wanted her to actually see the dome of Sayyida Zainab, see the shrine of Sayyida Zainab, and actually try and connect with her and say, she is my role model. She is the epitome of hijab, she is the epitome of strength, and I need to try and build that into my soul, into my life, so that I will never think and I will never question, why do I cover myself?
Absolutely.
You know?
Would you guys say that social hijab kind of follows on as a natural progression almost once you put the physical hijab on, or?
I wouldn't say it always follows, but it does in many aspects. But I think social hijab is something we need to kind of talk about more, because sometimes we talk about the physical hijab, but when we go back to social media, for example, a lot of it is the social hijab as well. And for example, TikTok and Instagram, TikTok, okay, let's not begin there. But Instagram and TikTok, the minimum age to sign up is
12, 13, right?
12, 13 years old. Now you go to TikTok and type in Google, people watching, type in Google, actually don't type that in Google, but the top 10 music that is used in TikTok, I was just doing this for research purposes, and I typed in the 10 top music that is used in TikTok. If I repeat the words now, I'll probably be banned from Imam Hussein TV. But it's so, oh my God, even me in my 30s, I can't even repeat those words.
You get embarrassed.
It's very embarrassing. I wouldn't even repeat those words in the comfort of my own home. But these are 13-year-olds that are going dancing to these music, you know, maybe innocently, or and they're not realizing what these words are. And that's the thing, social media sometimes is we have to focus on the social hijab as well. The language that's used by certain individuals. I can wear hijab, but if you're using that language, I find it very hypocritical. I don't know, I can't understand.
You can't reconcile the two.
Yeah,
I remember this incident at uni that happened to me. We were having like a tutorial or something, and one of the lecturers or the guy that was running the session, he must have used like a profanity or something, which was very characteristic of him. And at the end of the session, he came up to me and he was like, "I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to use that word in front of you, blah, blah, blah." And I was really surprised. But then I noticed I'm the only person in the session with the hijab on. So like you said, naturally you can't reconcile using language and profanity and things like that with the hijab.
And I think it's beautiful that they recognise those that wear hijab. It's like a spiritual covering as well. I remember also when I was in university, there was this boy that used to always tap people on the back all the time. So he was hitting everyone on their back. So when he got to me, he was like, "Oh, I can't touch you." And then and it's beautiful because the head covering it's a certain
it's that barrier.
It's that barrier, exactly. And people recognise it as a spiritual barrier, as a religious barrier, and there is a barrier built between people.
But then I think again, we wear the hijab, so actually it should give us that empowerment to do more.
Absolutely.
Because we're not, when often we were saying that, perhaps people in other discussions we've had where men would perhaps say, well, the woman should be seen but not heard, don't take her out the home. But you're wearing a head covering, you should know how to carry yourself in public. Your akhlaq should be, so when people say, yes, Muslims have the best akhlaq, not that they're swearing or they're, acting like louts, hanging on street corners, be an example of your religion. And we are the most obvious ones.
Absolutely.
So again, the way we dress, the way we behave, everything will be, looked at. And don't forget that, we can't, although we can't say people, think positively, but know that people also are very uncomfortable with us wearing it. And there's so many tactics to say, oh, look at these poor oppressed women. And we know this from history books. And, the colonialists, when they went, this mystery woman that was in the East, and she's like, well, she's inaccessible, but she's oppressed. Well, who gave you that idea, And again, we're all educated, we all can speak for ourselves. We sit with us 5 minutes, we'll tell you we're not oppressed. So again, it's about being our own media, you were saying, and not letting people take our narrative from us, but we are perfectly able to do that.
Absolutely. We are reaching the end of the show. Any closing remarks?
I just want to say, just to echo everything that's been said, don't use it as your barrier. Don't stop it from doing what you want to achieve to your goals. Because if you start thinking that I can't wear this, I can't do a certain job because of my hijab, then you will feel oppressed. But if you think, I have this on me and I am as good as the other candidates, if not better, you will go soaring high.
Absolutely.
So reclaim back the narrative, like you said. Use hijab. Know that hijab can make us excel in many aspects. We need to remove ourselves from the narrative that hijab is oppressive, hijab is this, hijab is that. What people like to tell us, and we wear it for a reason. And as the Quran says, it's for you to be recognized but not annoyed. So let's be recognized for our hijab and excel, but not
Absolutely. Anything to add, Zaha?
Just be proud of your identity. If you're wearing it, wear it for the right reasons and be proud of it.
Perfect.
It's for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So
thank you all three so much for joining us on the show today. We have come to the end of the show. Sadly, it's absolutely flown by. Join us for another episode of Her Thoughts, inshallah. But for now, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.